Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's presentation. My name is Adam Krieger, and I am the Director of Warren Township Youth and Family Services. I am also honored to hold the position of President of Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth, Warren Township, Gurnee, where our mission is to inspire our community to work together in developing healthy, competent, caring, and responsible youth, focusing on mental, physical, and social health. It is in the spirit that the panel discussion comes to you this evening. This discussion is titled Preparing Our Children for Success in Challenging Times, because part of helping our children succeed is guiding them to do more than just survive. We want to see our children thrive, even when we are experiencing the challenges that we are now. As Allie Hearn, one of our panel members, recently said to me, this evening is about providing a compass. While we hope that everyone participating will take away some specifics, this is more about setting ourselves and our children in the right direction. Our goal for this evening is to use this time to truly discuss how we can set our children on the best path forward and continue to grow. We have brought together members of our community from education, child development, and mental health. It is important to note that there are many other people from our community who are also more than capable of contributing to this dialogue, and we can definitely envision a future panel with even more diverse group of participants. This evening will begin with opening remarks by Allie Hearn and Dr. Charlotte Waxman, followed by brief comments by our other panel members, and then your questions. Please know anytime throughout this that you can certainly send in a question. I want to also mention that we have a list of some resources on our website. The website, and I'll put this in the chat section, is www.wtyouthservices.com. You will also on that you can have access to a worksheet that Allie will also mention. In addition, Jody Luca from the Gurnee Fire Department and an HHY member will respond to any questions in the chat section that you have that have already been answered at an earlier time. My role is as moderator. I will, however, pass on the original questions to the panelists. This event will start in a moment. We will use about the first 35 to 40 minutes to do brief presentations and comments by our panel members. And I hope to have 6:45 to 7:15 for discussion. Please feel free, as I said, to send questions at any time and use the chat section. First, our first presenter this evening is Allie Hearn. Allie is a national speaker, trainer, coach, and educational consultant working with Woodland School District 50. She will open this evening with a presentation called Finding Certainty in Uncertain Times. So, Allie, I'll hand it over to you. Allie, you're still on mute.
I've been on mute, yes. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here and patience with everything, right? With technology and everything else. So I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. It's a big challenge to try to give some messages in about 20 minutes or less. So I'm gonna do the best I can to try to give you everything I can in that amount of time. I've spent the last decade working with schools and districts across the country, helping them install supports that help support our kids. Do a lot of work supporting the educators, and anytime I get a chance to work with parents and families and community members, I take it for sure. I'm a parent of two myself, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and so I'm just so excited to be here with you as kind of a bridge between schools and home and everything else. So I do have a few slides I'm going to use tonight because I'm extremely visual, and perhaps some of you are as well, so I do want to give you a few things you can look at, and I'm going to try to get through this all quickly. Can I get a thumbs up from the panelists if you can see the correct screen? You see one slide and then hopefully us. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's move through this. If I can give you even one piece of something you'll take with you, then I will have done my job. So we'll just start by acknowledging the crazy world that we're in. And I love this quote that we're not all in the same boat, but we are absolutely in the same storm. And so I just want to start this night by thanking you so much for being here. Thanks for having the courage to get on. And whether you're here to learn, whether you're here to just connect with other families, connect with the community, it's very courageous to be on, and we appreciate it so much. It's really important today that we are all real, that we are human, And I want to just start with this piece about taking care of yourself. We spend a lot of time focusing on the work of supporting the youth, and that's their end game here, right, is supporting our kids. But it cannot happen if you're not supporting yourself. So I have to at least start with one image about self-care. But I just want to acknowledge the importance of being real, being human, and modeling that for our kids as well. So be considering what you can be doing to take care of yourself right now. A lot of different things out there for self-care. One of my challenges with the world right now in trying to support those in education, both the educators and the families, is just the abundance of resources, right? Which is actually not always helpful. So this is just one visual that you can use. It's a concept about self-care. There's 6 different slices here, and it's important to think about all aspects of taking care of yourself. So as we look to what we can be doing to support our youth and what you can be doing to support your own children, just be thinking about, how are we taking care of ourselves? How are you taking care of you? Because at the end of the day, for our kids to be okay, we have to be okay. So we want us to come first. So just a few pieces here to point out, things like asking for help and receiving help. By coming tonight, that's what I'm talking about. Being real, being human, being courageous, and just saying, let's be in this crazy mess together. I just think that that's a fantastic place to be. Practicing forgiveness. I hope you're doing that for yourself, and I hope you're doing that for your kids. And then also setting up some boundaries. The boundaries between work and home right now are kind of non-existent. And so finding a way to create those for yourselves it's very important. I'm literally working now right out of my bedroom. And so I'm sleeping where I work and I work where I sleep. And that's just the world that we are in. So wherever you can put up boundaries, it's going to be very important for you and your family. So what I wanted to talk about here tonight, the main thing, and again, I'm going to try to keep it brief, but the place that I'm coming from to talk with you about this tonight is when we feel lost, and we are all in this storm, and we can tend to feel like we don't know what side is up. The thing I know to do is to go back to the roots of what I know works. You go back to the anchor of the things we've done that we know work to help support youth, to help support adults. In the work that I have done over time, what that has meant is creating a safe, consistent, predictable, equitable environment. Everything that I help folks do in schools is about creating a safe, consistent, predictable, equitable environment. And I say it all the time, all day when I help support educators. And so that's the message I wanted to bring tonight, because as we think about what should we be doing in our homes to help support our kids, it's that same concept. We want to create a safe, consistent, predictable, equitable environment. Anytime folks are coming from trauma, from disruption, from anything out of the norm, which this absolutely is, and it goes on especially for some time, the best thing we can do is create a safe, consistent, predictable environment for our kids. There's 5 pieces that make up this process, and I'm going to try to go through those quickly with you. I think that there's something to be taken from each piece of this, so I hope that there's something that you can take and that can be applicable in your home. I'm going to go through each of these so you can see the visual, and then I'm going to break them down so that each one makes sense. So the first thing is about defining expectations. The second is about teaching to those expectations so that we know exactly what we mean by what's expected and creating routines around those things. Again, that's what we do in schools, but that's absolutely where I would be pointing families to as well, in my own home and to you here tonight. Acknowledging and celebrating when we're doing the things that we're wanting to see, the behaviors that we want to see, folks meeting those expectations. Being able to respond when there is challenging behavior that surfaces or where we're not really meeting what's the expected behavior and way to be in the environment, and then using data to make some decisions from there about where you go next. So this is kind of, it seems like a maybe complex model. There's a lot of pieces to it, but what I wanted to do tonight was just break it down quickly so that you could maybe take 1 or 2 pieces from each of these different components. So the first piece is about clearly defining expectations. We're talking about core values, expectations. Where is the core for you in your home? In my home, we tend to say, be kind, be safe, and take care of one another. Those have been the values, the expectations that we've gravitated towards. And what happens when you have those is it lets you anchor back to them quickly. So if you don't already have kind of core values, core expectations of like, how do we live in this home? Now might be a great time to start doing that. If you're not sure about them or you want to understand more about expectations and the school district that you're connected with, has already defined them, you might find that your school district has things like be respectful, be responsible, be safe, or something like that. You can then take that language into your home so that it starts to become consistent and there's common language there. Consistency and predictability is the best thing that we can have, and that's why all of this ties to that. Clearly defining what's expected will help with that process. And then everything you do can anchor back to that. So the second piece of this then ties right into that about making it explicit. So when we say be kind, or when we say be safe, what do we really mean by that? So teaching and making it explicit is where you start to break that down. You take the expectations that you've made, and then you start to say, well, what does that look like? And all we would have to say today is, if somebody said, be respectful, well, that can look really different with different families today, right? In one family, being respectful is wearing masks, and another family, being respectful is not wearing masks. It's very confusing for kids. I mean, if it's confusing for all of us, it's confusing for kids. So we want to make sure that we get really explicit about what does that look like. So if you have be kind, be safe, take care of one another as your anchor, the expectations in your home, then you start to be able to break those out by different times of the day or different places in your home. So what would that specifically look like in the morning? What does that look like during lunchtime? What does that look like after school and at dinner or when you're doing your homework? And by doing this, you can start to make what creates a safer environment for our kids. Again, I'll say it a million times. We're looking for predictability, consistency, safety so that our kids can thrive, and adults thrive in that as well. So we want them to be explicit. We want to know exactly what to expect. And you start to make some routines then so that youth can get used to that. So again, if you don't already have routines, schedules that kids can follow, visual schedules, all of those things, that would fall into this kind of a category. Then we practice to exhaustion. I joke about the fact that I have like bruises on my forehead from how many times I'm smashing the table, reminding my own children about the expectations in our home, right, that we're all agreeing to. So you have to do it over and over and over. And if you find that you're doing it more these days, that makes sense and would be the case oftentimes right now, because everybody can kind of tend to take a step back when things are like this. Acknowledging and celebrating is a huge piece of the process. When we're doing things right and we're hitting the mark, we really want to be able to celebrate our youth. So providing positive, specific feedback to our kids is one of the best things that we can do. When you give your kids specific positive feedback, and again, we do this at school, and so I'm encouraging it to happen in the home, it makes it more likely that you're going to see that expected thing again. We're looking for a ratio of 5 to 1, and this is a crazy hard number to hit, but the research says we're looking for 5 positive statements for every 1 negative. So if you're a parent or a caregiver in a home and you're with little ones and you're thinking about how often you give a negative comment, negative feedback, negative something to the youth, we should be doing 5 positives to offset that. And in my house, these days it tends to go like, by 5 positives go to my 4-year-old, and then my 1 negative goes to my 7-year-old. And I feel real successful, like I'm doing 5 to 1, 5 to 1. It has to be the same child. So the one child that you give the negative to needs to get the 5 positives to start to offset that. So it's something that is a work in progress for me as well. We can change behavior by 80% just by pointing out what people are doing right. So it's so important that the language in the home right now stays in that positive zone as much as possible by pointing out the things that we want to see versus getting in the habit of doing so much pointing at the things that we don't want to see. So you can consider when it comes to this acknowledgement piece, which is just one piece of the puzzle, that there's things you do right away. Like I might give my kids stickers or marbles, or if you have older youth, you still might find some way to give stamps or numbers or somehow tally and keep score, that then there's things right away that come with the verbal feedback to the youth. And then there's things that they can earn over time. So considering an immediate, something you do immediately in the moment to continue the momentum of that great behavior that we saw or thing that we were doing that was expected. And then you can think about building that up over time to really get a stronger push in the house. Responding to challenging behavior is, I think, where everybody wants to go right now. I'm getting asked by teachers every day, by families, what should I be doing when my kid is not doing what's expected? And so clearly defining our response to behavior is just as important as making it clear what is expected. It's part of creating a really safe environment when we let our kids know what will happen if we're not following the expectations that we've laid out. Brene Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So we just want to make sure that we're being very clear about what is the thing we want to see, what's the thing we don't want to see, and what happens either way. And as much as we can stay out of, we want it to be just as much as possible observational, which coming in my house, it's very hard for me to do that. But we want to just be pointing out, this is great, this is what I want to see, this is not so great, this is what I, not what I want to see, here's how it would be to do it better. But we don't want to try to get the emotionality mixed into it as much as possible, which, like I said, is quite hard for me as well. We should spend about 80% of our time on the prevention work and the stuff that happens before there's ever an issue, as we do the 20% on the responsive side. So it's, part of what I get asked a lot, like I said, is people wanting to know what to do afterwards. And I constantly push people towards considering what we do before. Creating a safe, consistent, predictable environment is the best thing we can do to help kids thrive. If we rely on the carrot or the stick afterwards, it's really not the thing that's going to help create that environment that we need for them to thrive. So consider focusing on the relationships, repairing harm, having conversations when things go wrong. I'll leave this in the slide deck that you can have, these restorative questions. These kinds of questions are going to help with relationships and making sure that things are staying strong around community and relationships in our home. When we get into the pattern of the punitive responses, the research shows, and we know from having done it for so long, that that's not where we're going to get the change. And in our homes, all being so tight and close right now, it usually gets this momentum going in the wrong direction of what we want to see happening. The last, just a couple pieces to wrap this up. I know it's a lot to try to cram into a short amount of time, but I'm hoping you can take at least one or two nuggets from this, is to find some way to see in your own family how things are going. How will you know if things are okay, and how will you know if things aren't? And you can kind of establish some of those pieces yourself with your family. But how do you know if your kid's doing all right, and how do you know if they're not? And just as a family, what are your markers that you're going to make for where things are at now, and then how we know if it's getting better or it's getting worse? It's something to just keep in mind. We want to be prepared to increase the dose of what we're doing. Just like we give more medicine if somebody's not getting healthy, we want to increase the dose of support that we're giving if what we're doing in the home isn't working. And so just something to be considering for us in the home, as we do in the school, is that as we see increased problem behaviors or challenges at home, we want it to equal an increase in support and not necessarily an increase in punishment, which can be very hard these days when everybody's fuses are short and emotions can just get high and hot really quickly. Consider talking with your kids or your loved ones, your family members or your neighbors who you're taking care of, little ones around you. Just make sure that we're getting youth voice involved. They have a lot to say, and they've got some really great things to say. And so we want to make sure that we're getting their voice as part of the picture. So that's what I have to say today about what do you do when you feel lost? No matter if I'm talking to a school or a family or in my own home, I take a deep breath and I say, let's go back to the basics. Creating a safe, consistent, predictable environment. Let's make sure we clearly define what we expect to see here and how we be a family together. What are our values? What's the core, mission of our family? What can we anchor back to? Make sure those things are explicit. We make clear routines, things that keep that consistency so that kids can feel safe with that. Celebrate when we do it right. Have a plan for when things aren't going as they should be. And then kind of keep some tally or some track of something for how we know if things are getting better. I will wrap up with this quote, which I just adore. Our children are little heroes too, missing their grandparents, extended family, friends, and school, lack of normal routines, loss of structure to their day, parents who are stressed, worried, scared, and just different, overhearing talk and news without an understanding of what they hear. Give your little hero more cuddles, more one-on-one playtime, and an extra dose of patience and forgiveness. Information on where you can reach me, which will be shared, so I don't have to necessarily share that now. So that's it for me to start off the night. A little bit about the anchor we tie back to, and don't forget where we started, which is taking care of yourself. If you're not okay, it's hard for them to be okay, and all of us are not really okay always these days, so do what you can to take care of you.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you for getting us off to a wonderful start. And yes, the link we sent out earlier to everybody If you wish, you can find Allie as well as everybody on this panel. Their contact information will be on the website. So let's go on and continue with our next speaker. Dr. Charla Waxman is the community liaison for Lake Behavioral Hospital and we'll briefly discuss resiliency. So Charla?
Okay, we're going to share this screen here. Let's start. Let's see if this is going to work. Technology is great when it works, folks. So we are going to talk about resiliency. I'm assuming everybody can see this first slide here. Resiliency theory ties in so beautifully with what Allie had talked about, because these resiliency factors, according to the theory, indicate that if a child even has one of these instilled in their life, their potential to thrive and survive any situation just goes up incrementally. The first is problem solving. And that doesn't mean that a child has to be able to solve every problem, but they have to have a level of confidence that is kind of instilled in them so that they can ask for help when they need it and go to the problem solvers that will help move them forward. You know, this is the kind of thing that Allie talked about in helping kids feel supported. That's one of the ways that problem solving, that particular skill can help kids move forward. And that's what's going to cause them to move forward in problem solving, is to know that they're supported by the adults in their life. A sense of humor. These are tough times, folks, and to be able to keep that sense of humor, have a joke of the day at the dinner table. Let kids know that you can laugh at yourself as an adult, or you know, kind of enjoy the situation for what it is. Really establishes that no matter how bad it seems, there's always something to laugh about. There's always something to enjoy. A sense of future, according to this theory, just letting a kid know that there's a tomorrow and that tomorrow is bright and something to look forward to is really, really important for them. Allie talked a lot about building routines, again, supporting kids, acknowledging and celebrating them, responding to challenging behavior, setting up goals, routines, kind of laying out what this household should look like, laying out what a school day should look like. That's social competence, helping kids understand what can occur in these four walls under parameters that create success for myself as a child and for our family. So creating social competence, the pleases, the thank yous, the kindnesses, all of those things define for a child an opportunity for success and creates in them bounce back opportunities. That last one here, mentorship, is the one that has stood the test of time. A mentor isn't necessarily somebody who has to do anything more than support a child in developing, support a child in thriving, and support a child in moving forward. So that's the framework of this. And you can see what somehow is just a really great connection to, let me see if I can, there you go, to parenting. So never before has parental engagement been more important than where we are right now. And this is what's important. In so many of the Illinois school surveys, research shows that parent involvement still is the most consistent way for kids to have great outcomes. And the more kids are engaged in their schooling and in what's going on now in terms of being schooled at home, the more potential the student outcomes will be what we as parents would hope for. Face-to-face interaction at this time may have to be provided even in the educational framework from the parent. So it's really important for us as parents to be involved in what's happening with our children now, especially as it relates to the education field. So parents have to step up. And my last slide here really is just to take a look at virtual school is as important as what occurs in the school buildings. So stay on top of your children's progress, be supportive, ask questions, be a part of it. And then I have a little quote here from Captain Kangaroo, if you remember him. Parents are the ultimate role models for children. Every word, movement, and action has an effect. No other person or outside force has a greater influence on a child than the parent. I talked earlier about the Illinois Youth Survey. Parents are still number one, the go-to for kids when they're in trouble, when they need someone, when they're hurting, and when they're happy. So hang on to that and help those kids move forward. Thank you.
Charlotte, thank you so much. Important information about what resiliency is all about. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to take a moment to call on each of our remaining panel members, the 4 panel members, and I'll start with the school representatives. And what I'm going to ask each person to do who's on this panel is just take a moment to say something about what you feel it is that children need to thrive in this current environment. And I understand it may be a very general statement, but then you are also welcome, if you wish, to say something about how you or your institution is trying to help with families and help the children be as successful as possible during this period of time. So with that, I'm going to first go ahead and I will call on Jerry Wyman from Gurnee District 56. So Jerry, if you want to jump on.
Hi, parents and other professionals that have joined us. Thank you so much for coming out tonight on this rainy day. That's my idea of trying to be humorous to start off. Showing up to these meetings as a parent or a concerned adult is the first step to really show what you're willing to do to help your family out. And I just want to applaud you for doing that, because as the panelists were getting together, we were talking about how this is your dinner time, and sometimes, you know, there's so many other things that you have to take care of as a family. But as far as thriving and helping your children thrive, Allie spoke a lot about setting up routines. Routines are so important because right now everything is uncertain. And if you think about anxiety comes from all that uncertainty that happens in our lives. So if we could get rid of some of that uncertainty, create routines, and then create positive rewards for these kids so that they could then feel like, wow, I have control over my life. That makes things so much easier for kids to deal with their anxiety during this time. I've been a social worker at Gurnee 56 for 25 years. I've also worked as a wrestling coach for 25 years. So I know what it's like to have to work with kids that have some emotional problems, as well as athletes that are trying their best to achieve a goal. And one of the things that I find that is, if you're as positive as possible with kids, using those 5 positives and maybe 1 corrective statement, that really builds a really good connection with your child, with your student, or whoever it is you're working with. I also have 2 children. They're both Woodland students. We have a 2nd grader and a 3rd grader, and they're wonderful kids. However, as a parent and juggling being a professional at the same time, it's hard. We all need to take care of ourselves. And so I want to leave with these 2 words: treat yourself. Treat yourself to something that makes you feel good. It doesn't have to be a tangible thing. It's the start of the football season. Some of us need that little bit of escape, watching football, watching baseball. If your kids really need to watch one YouTube video try to set something up where you could help them earn that right to watch a little video. And then, give them a little limit. They shouldn't be watching videos all night, but give them a limit where, hey, if you've done a really good day at school, I'm going to give you this chance to do this. Or allow them to use their phone to do something that maybe, call a friend or something. So I really think that's really important, that we've got to treat ourselves and definitely treat our kids. That really builds a really good connection. Well, Adam, do you want me to add anything else about what our school district is doing? Or?
You know what? Why don't we do this? Because I'm kind of being mindful of time. If there's something really quick that you want to highlight, that's fine. But I suspect the parents within the district probably have a pretty good sense of what you guys are doing. But again, if there's something you really would like to highlight, that's absolutely fine.
That's all. I think I pass it on now, and if questions come up, we could answer those.
Wonderful, thank you. Why don't I go ahead and we'll go over to Pat Keeley. He is Associate Superintendent at Warren Township High School.
Good evening, parents. As others have stated, I really appreciate you being here. We're hoping this type of presentation helps you. We want to partner with you to provide support for your students at home. As far as from our perspective, we think the most important thing to do, as others have stated, again, developing that routine, that schedule, something that is consistent. Kids are creatures of habit. They want consistency, although some think, oh, kids want to do their own thing. They don't want anyone telling them what to do. We see it every day when we're in normal times and in school, bell to bell. They like going to their classes. They sit the same place for lunch every day. They go to the same homeroom before school. They go sit in the same spot in the hallway when we are present. They're really creatures of habit, and routine is good for them. And hopefully our remote schedule that provides all synchronous instruction is providing that for them. And as parents, anything you can do to reinforce that schedule, to get students to consistently attend and stay in their classes, and then even after school, setting up some type of schedule with them, some type of routine, we think that's very helpful because students really need that. And then finally, with the engagement piece, we certainly have some engagement opportunities after school. Our activities are starting to run after school, as well as our athletics. We hope kids that maybe haven't joined something in the past will be interested in joining something in the past, to make sure they are engaged, and more importantly, again, developing a schedule and a routine for students to be involved, because we think that is the most important.
Pat, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to Robert Maychek, who is the Associate Superintendent of Education over at Woodland District 50.
Thanks, Adam, and good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be a part of this panel with my colleagues. In Woodland, Allie Hearn has worked with District 50 for a few years now, so we're all drinking the Kool-Aid of creating safe, consistent, predictable, and equitable environments. And in terms of helping children thrive, we've looked at how we can replicate all the great things that we've tried to do in our classrooms while kids are at home. And Adam, something you spoke about early on was this idea of needing to support families. And that's certainly not lost on us in District 50 either. Parents are really challenged, as Jerry talked about. We all are going to work, and we have children who are trying to learn. I've got a third grader at home myself. So we are trying to make remote learning as positive an experience and as equitable an experience for all of our children and all of our families as we can. And it's really required some innovation on our part that's been actually really healthy to kind of think outside the box. Sounds cliche, but that's really what we've been doing. We've been utilizing our transportation fleet, for example, to deliver computer devices to families who cannot get to school. We are using our buses to deliver, we've got hotspots for Wi-Fi. We've got mobile pickups for lunches and breakfast for families to support them that way. One of the things that I'm really proud of that we're doing is we've been trying to partner with all of our childcare providers, not only in District 50, but around the Gurnee area, to not only ask them to expand their hours of operation and expand maybe the age levels of the kids that they've been taking, because more parents need safe and affordable childcare while they're trying to go to work and the kids are home. And all of our partners have been great in that regard and have been so wonderful to work with. And on the flip side of that, we have created a conduit to the community to start up a scholarship program for families feeling the financial pinch of having to now pay a child care bill on top of all their regular monthly bills and groceries and everything else. And the response from the community and from some of our businesses around town has been great. And we've been able to offer some scholarships not only to offset the cost of childcare for some of our not only our financially strapped families, but parents who have no choice but to go to work, our essential workers and our first responders, for whom we are so grateful for the service they're providing. So we're doing that. I think as an educator and as a dad, I think what I'm most proud of, however, is how our staff and how our administrators in our 4 schools have really worked so hard to make sure that our kids know that they're special and that they're loved and that they're missed. I mean, when we had our supply pickups, every school did something a little bit different, from high-fiving, virtual high fives as the kids drove by, and we had popsicles, and we had candy, and the teachers were out, and parents had signs on their cars. It was awesome. And as somebody new in District 50, it was really amazing to see the love that our families have for our teachers and that our teachers have for the kids. The posts on social media the past week and a half have been awesome. And we're really excited to get all of our students back as soon as it's safe to do that. Until then, we're really working hard to replicate, to the extent we can, the very positive experience that our kids would have had in our classrooms with what we're asking them to do at home, and understanding that parents are playing a really important role in that, trying to support them and their needs as well, because we understand that that's a huge component for us. So.
Robert, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I just want to sort of capitalize on one of the things you said, the importance of celebrating, finding every excuse and every moment to celebrate, because sometimes there just isn't enough of that right now. So with that, I'd like to shift over to our final panelist, somebody I've known for many years. I'm excited to have her on this panel. Sandra Gomez is the health educator and community policy advocate with the Lake County Health Department in the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Services. So Sandra, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, and everyone for being here. So I want to provide 3 recommendations. The first is, one of the keys to keep in mind that the children have the same childhood needs under the current challenge. So, and maybe even more. So adjust the routines to cover their needs. For example, if they are missing his friends, try to coordinate an online play day with them. Be creative. The most important part is how you present this new normal these days. The second one is protect the children's mental health at the same level of physical health. All of us know very well how to protect our kids' physical health. And maybe now you are thinking, okay, how can I do that with the mental health? So my recommendation is start thinking in this way. If I'm providing a nutrition meal to my child, okay, how can I do that with the mental health? Okay, try to praise your child. Mention all the good things they are doing. If you are teaching them to have a good hygiene, okay, in the nights before go to sleep, say, how was your day? Help the kids to learn how to process the emotions or difficulty throughout the day, just verbalizing or expanding the vocabulary of the feelings. And the last one is families that identify their needs and look for services have better level of overall health. So sometimes when we have problems, we tend to isolate ourselves and we think, oh, this is happening only to me. Or maybe the other families are dealing better than me. And that's not true. So don't be isolate yourself or your family, reach out for help, identify the family needs. Remember that all the agencies are mostly all the agencies are providing the services in person or telehealth, like Warren Township here. We are together this night. Thanks for the services, but also Lake County Health Department have most of the programs running in person or in telehealth. So the last recommendation is reach out for help. You are not alone. That's all what I have.
Sandra, thank you so much. And yes, so that everybody knows, for children birth through 17 and then young adults 18 to 21 at Warren Township Youth Services, we do have free mental health counseling services for the residents of Warren Township. The health department also has fantastic services. Arden Shore, which is a little bit down the road in Gurnee, also is offering a lot of free services. So there is more than ever, honestly, there really are very few barriers to getting some good quality counseling for yourself and for your children. So I'm glad it's been mentioned. I'm just going to say a couple words, and I really want to shift over to questions. And just to let you know, I have some questions that were sent in advance. So if we don't have questions right away from the parents that are listening, I have some questions to present to the panelists based on some advanced stuff that was sent to me. I'm going to actually see, because I've got like a minute, so I am going to actually try to share something really quickly, but I'm not going to try too hard here in case wow, I think it's going to work. Okay. So what you're all looking at there this is sort of the perspective that I take and that we take here at Youth Services. And this is, in our opinion, vitally important to children thriving during this period. And really what this is pulled from is about 30 years of solid research on trauma. And trauma-informed parenting really has these three components. I'm going to tell you, my statements are going to be incredibly brief, but what you can do is if you go to our website and you'll see this model. If you click on each one of those 4 bullet points, we have a wonderful 6 to 9 minute video to go with it that fully explains more in depth. But basically, in a nutshell, being a trauma-informed parent and helping your kids thrive through this, number one, involves understanding the impact of traumatic stress so that you accurately understand what the acting out behavior is, rather than responding to it as typical ho-hum, kind of normal acting out. It's to understand the way that, in fact, traumatic stress or just these extreme levels of stress are, in fact, altering our children's responses. And so it's having an understanding of that. And like I said, you can learn more on the video. Creating a safe place. This goes back to what Allie was talking about in terms of stability and predictability and equitability. These are some of the most important components, but it is that essential piece that ultimately the child is every day reassured they're going to be okay, they're going to be protected, and life will get back to something more normal in the future. Taking care of yourself, again, I think that's been mentioned a couple of times. If you don't put on your oxygen mask first, you can't possibly help anyone else. And then finally, teaching coping and resiliency. And more than ever, it's about, in a very conscious way, really helping your children understand what you do as a parent to get through difficult times. And for you to take time to really ask questions and listen to your own child talk about what they do. And it can be those things as simple as, deep breathing, taking a walk, which are all sort of obvious ones that we know, but it can also have to do with things like faith and those things that are less tangible about the way that we look at the world and do we reach out and ask for help. So I just want to mention that this is a model that we use in terms of how we are understanding this unique and challenging period of time. Please feel free to go to the website for a much more in-depth explanation of each one of these categories. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. And please, anybody who has a question for our panelists, otherwise I will jump in and throw a general question to the panelists, and kind of anybody who wants to jump in and take a piece of it is welcome. why don't I do this? Just so I keep the ball rolling here a little bit. I don't have a question right away. I'm going to go ahead and throw out one of the questions that was sent to me in advance. Okay. I think this is a really interesting and challenging one. How do I help myself and my child find meaning in this? It's a great question. It's a challenging question. It's a very meaty question, but a lot of thriving through difficult times is tied to meaning. So I'm open to any of the panelists who want to jump in and offer any thoughts on how we might help our children find meaning in what is a very difficult situation. Any thoughts on that?
I can jump in for a second, Adam. It's an interesting phrase to be using. I was nodding my head because I've been really interested in how the time period that we're going through right now has been attached to different stages of grief, and that we are all grieving. And especially as the school year starts, educators are grieving, students are grieving, families are grieving. So that cycle from Kubler-Ross about the stages of grief, we're all I find I go through probably all the stages every day. But David Kessler came along and added this 6th stage of grief, which is called finding meaning. And so it's really interesting because if you check him out, if you look up David Kessler, he's did a ton of work with Kubler-Ross, and then actually lost one of his children and went through grief himself. And what he found was that beyond these stages of grief, there was a sense of finding meaning. So you can't find meaning in terms of, oh, this makes sense why it's happening. He'll never understand why his child died, right? But you can find meaning in terms of purpose and where you start to find yourself thrive within that. So that's something that I talk with educators about, and I'm so excited that came up on this call, that teaching our kids to do that and finding ways to do that ourselves is so important. So the formula for how to do it, I don't think we can give like a 1 + 1 = 2 on that. I think that if you're allowing yourself to go through the stages of grief, that you may find yourself starting to get there and see where meaning comes from. I think teaching our kids what fills us up, even when you go through such a hard time. So my kids know I find so much meaning with getting on and talking to educators every day, from doing things like this. I'll go in the other room when I'm done and tell them how much this filled me up and how I find meaning by doing this. So figuring out the places where you do feel full in life right now during such a challenging time, and sharing that with your kids and modeling it. But I just wanted to make the connection to the stages of grief because David Kessler did that for us, and finding meaning is the 6th stage. So check it out if that's helpful as another resource to go look at.
Yeah, I unmuted Adam just to kind of add to that. You talked about feeling full in life, and one of the ways to create meaning is to get memories and to give memories. So these are great times where you can do special things for your kids, special things as a family. We've seen wonderful give backs in the community and wonderful ways that kids have participated in give backs in the communities. I recently visited Kenosha just after, one of the uptown areas just literally turned to rubble. And as I went through to participate, there were groups of high school kids collecting, cleaning, collecting food items, providing food items, cleaning up, and just jumping in on their own. And that's kids giving meaning to the worst that has happened to a community. So giving memories, helping your child have good memories during this time, and helping those kids give other people good memories is one of the ways to create meaning during the most challenging times. So be creative, folks.
Wonderful. Who else? Anybody else want to jump in on this one? Any personal thoughts on this? Okay. I'll just add creating a larger narrative. Creating a larger narrative, and this probably ties into what both Allie and Charlotte have said, but joy is incredibly important, but creating having an understanding of what the narrative in your life looks like. And you can do that through creating a story about what it is that we're all experiencing, the way that life went from one way to a different way, and beginning to sort of understand the path that we're on, and hopefully that path moves towards something more back to normal or more positive or more stable. But helping children understand that sort of narrative that they're on gives them a sense of being on a path, and that path creates a sense of meaning. It helps them not feel as lost. And you can do that through positivity. You can do that through seeking joy. You can do that through bringing attention to the way that they have overcome certain struggles that, maybe in the past they never asked for help, but now look at you, you're, in the middle of all this tragedy, you're asking for help, you're opening up, you're talking, you're processing. So creating some sense of meaning ties a lot to the narrative. I have a question here by one of our parents. So I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and just kind of read it to everybody. Since our children have been missing out on so much of the socialization normally experienced throughout the school setting, are there any creative ideas to fill this need that have become apparent in our school districts, or others that can be shared for parents online? So if I'm understanding the question is that with the absence of those opportunities, it sounds like this parent is looking for creative ideas on how to keep their children socially engaged in the world without the usual opportunities. So any thoughts on that, on how we can help our children with this?
Well, speaking to the high school age students, I think that's why our Board of Education and our superintendent has supported some activities to run and clubs to run both hybrid and in person, because they are in potted safe groups, following obviously all the safety standards that we're supposed to follow. And the reason behind that is it's easier to do that than let the, if we weren't in the pandemic and just having kids to school, obviously. So we're able to run some of those clubs and activities so those kids can get engaged and socialization can happen. We think that's critically important. And not just in person, but also online. At least they're talking to kids their age and trying to accomplish things together with their fellow students. In addition to the clubs, we also have athletics that again have safely met on campus, following all the standards set forth by the state. I think that is a great way to get some socialization and get engagement during this time when students are at home during the school day.
Anyone else would like to jump in? And I'm going to expand the question a little bit just because I have another question from a parent that's very, very similar nature, which is also kind of tied into that is how do you keep the issue of socialization on the forefront of children's minds when many kids have now spent almost 6 months largely isolated? So how do we not only find creative ways to make it happen, but how do we also remind our kids that it's important? So Jerry, with that, why don't you jump in?
So our district's in the planning stages. We are fully remote except for a group of about 100 students that are at Viking and Spalding School. And these are students that started first quarter and will continue to attend school in-house. But the in-house program is a remote learning program that is supervised by staff, and it's all like in the gym, that they're all socially distanced. So with the exception of our in-house remote program, what our district is trying to do is create remote clubs and remote athletics. And some athletics are going to be a lot easier than, like, say, wrestling, that you could do remotely. Like if you think about basketball, there's a ton of skills that you could learn remotely, just dribbling in your front driveway or somewhere near a park. Wrestling's going to be quite a challenge, but there are still a lot of skills that we're thinking about promoting online and conditioning that we're going to do online, as well as clubs like art club, Spanish club, and a variety of other different clubs that we're going to promote online. This is just the start. We're just in the planning stages. So we haven't kicked it off yet, but my guess is sometime in October, there will be a number of clubs and activities that District 56 students will start to be able to join.
I think something along those same lines. related to what school looks like with the virtual clubs, the other big change from last spring for virtually all of our schools is this shift to in-person or live, or what they call synchronous learning. And what that has allowed our teachers to do is to actually have opportunities for students to interact with one another via whatever social, virtual platform that we're using, whether it's Zoom or Google, assuming that all those technologies are working for us. But that we now have the ability to create virtual breakout rooms where small groups of students could work with a teacher on a particular topic, share information, or converse with one another through their Chromebook or iPad, which is certainly not the same as sitting next to your friend, but it's very different than the isolation that most kids and most teachers felt last spring, when everything was sort of tied to a link and you had families were trying to get school done at like 8 or 9 at night. Again, we're trying to make it look more like a classroom experience that a student would have had in our classrooms. And that experience is certainly predicated on, there's a social aspect to learning that we're all aware of. And we're trying to incorporate that the best we can using the available technology we have.
Thank you. Sandra, did you want to add something?
Thank you. So I know that older kids are having that big deal because they are playing games and they have their friends online. But I know that many parents are saying my 5, 6, 7 years old even doesn't want to call the friends because they want to play with them in person. It's because of the age as well. They just want to see them. So if you are unable to see friends online or see in a park, having a social distance, one of the things that might help is to have a picture of the kids from the last school year or the close friends and put somewhere when your child's room or the kitchen or any place when they are able to see their friends. So they are not going to have the feelings of everybody disappear. No, they're still there. They have the memories. Also, you can talk with your teacher, your child teacher, and see if they can take a Zoom or pictures when the kids are online, and maybe have that poster someplace in your home, and that will help at least the kids to see that they have other classmates and friends, but see this visually.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on this? Let me just say a couple quick words about the youth services. We have the Teen Center. So we really, the Gurnee Teen Center now, the downside is it goes down to 6th grade, so it doesn't serve the younger children. The Teen Center serves 6th through 12th. And we've really transitioned from being just a traditional after-school program to really being more a place for social engagement. We actually, for the first time ever, ran a summer camp. And we have a virtual version of our Teen Center where we do a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons, and there's been other things that we've done online. We have honestly struggled trying to create Zoom kind of meetup groups with kids. We have found that kids function in a much more spontaneous way, and it can be really challenging. I think honestly, the school districts are very smart to try to tie that into school, because I think you're much more likely to kind of pull those kids in right when they're finishing their academics. I think the problem with us is, you start trying an hour or two later trying to get kids pulled in virtually. It just really doesn't seem to work well. But we are having kids live in our Teen Center, and we are finding a really positive response. Right now, the numbers are pretty low. We're getting between 15 to 20 kids on average a day, but we're very much shifting to social engagement and activities as being our priority. So whereas in the past, we might have just kids sitting, in front of a computer, we're really trying to get them engaged socially. And while the weather's nice, we're doing as much outside as we can and maintaining appropriate social distance as everyone else is. Does anybody else have any further thoughts particularly on those kids who have become, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just let me add that just know your child. And be willing to ask questions like, are you feeling lonely? Or, how are you feeling right now? Or what's it like to be without your friends? Some kids really don't mind, being connected more to the house. Other kids, it's the hardest thing they've ever experienced. So really just know your kids and be willing to ask questions about what's going on with them in the moment.
Okay, thank you so much, Charlie. Let me I'm going to kind of combine two questions that I think would go well together right now, and also kind of mindful of make sure we have enough time to get to a few more questions. So one of the questions that was sent to us in advance had to do with this idea of I've got a teenager, I've got a kid who is looking at tons of news, looking at tons of videos. It's all really negative. Everything is, the news is all depressing and social unrest and everything. So one part of the question is around the issue of sort of kids' exposure to the negative stuff, and the question being asked, do I limit this? Do I try to interrupt letting my kid see all this negativity? They're already in a kind of negative space to begin with. And then also there's another question of a sort of similar nature having to do with parents who are asking, we're in a tough time right now. My wife and I are kind of, we're having a rough time. Our financial situation is not good. Even if we could do activities, we really don't have the money. How much should we level with our kids without overburdening them with things that they don't have control over? So any thoughts on this question of, again, negative input of press, as well as all the sort of negative realities that families are dealing with? How should parents conceptually think of this? Any ideas?
I think for some of if you're talking about high school kids, I do think that it's finding its way where appropriate in some of our courses that we're offering, and kids are talking about those things and what they're seeing in the media and what's impacting them. We have quite a few classes that would touch on those things. I know a lot of our teachers, particularly early on, were focused on developing relationships, kids, kind of checking in with them, see where they were, what was bothering them, and how they, maybe what went on in the spring and how it was going to be different this year, trying to be positive. So I think a lot of those things were talked about with them, from the teachers, and trying to meet kids again where they are and trying to help them make sense of what's going on without, taking positions on things, just trying to talk things through with kids. So I'm relatively confident that for the high school age kids, particularly if they're juniors or seniors, for sure, that is definitely happening at the high school. And as far as a parent goes, a parent's view with that is just talking to their kids about those subjects. It's healthy to talk to them about that. It's not healthy to ignore it. As far as I'm concerned, as far as what we're seeing with our kids, they want to talk about things, and with limits, of course, but don't be afraid to talk to them about that.
I think I would just jump in and say, I'm not sure this is any rocket science or anything, but I just want to validate for folks that finding the balance, I think that's where it's at with this, is finding a balance. I've got a 7 and a 4-year-old, and it would be easy and quick for me to just say, I want to protect them from all of this and just have it all be, I want to put them in a bubble. I always have wanted to, but this is bubble time. I want to just bubble wrap them up. And it's really important that we find times to be real and talk about this. And my 4-year-old will be somewhere saying, how come they're not wearing a mask? And there's a reality to it. And yet I think, so if I was really giving advice on where's the line, it's if you start to feel like your kids are being negatively impacted in the sense that it impacts their functioning in any way about them. So if you find, I think folks know their kids enough, hopefully, to look for signs of if a kid is acting different. So if I were to see my kids acting extra sad, signs of any anxiety type signs, withdrawing, and any of the things that would let you know something's not right with your kid, it may be the point to kind of draw the line a little bit and pull them out. I think it's good to model some other things besides the negative things we're seeing. So I'll just throw out there's something called the Good News Movement, which is, you can find it on any of the social media outlets. The stories on there are absolutely amazing. And so as your kids get older, it's harder to make them do things, but perhaps you can model some of that. So at the dinner table or when you're gathering up as a family crew, you can find the best good news story of the day, share some of those. So I think that there's a place also where we can model and infuse finding the silver linings and the positivity. In our family at night, we talk about best parts of the day, most challenging parts of the day, times where we felt different things. And so it's just, I think that's a great time to infuse some of that and make sure that we're hitting on all angles of this, the realities of it, but the good that's coming out of it, and maybe finding silver linings could be a piece of that. So anyways, all that to say balance, I think that's the one word I would use to describe an answer to that one.
Wonderful. And I will add, take this an opportunity to teach the youth. They are going to have many problems in the future. We all know, right? So this is the perfect time to learn with you at home. So whatever skills they develop during this time, that is going to help them in the future.
I think also to create some, have some objectivity about it, talk about it in general terms and what's happening. Don't be afraid to have a no news day in your house. Not hearing the news isn't going to make any difference in what you can do about it. So have a no news day in your house where you're watching other kinds of TV, taking some of that pressure off. And, you know, as it kind of relates to, you know, what's going on between parents and what's happening at the higher levels of the household, you know, I think there are some things that need to stay at the adult level and don't need to go down to kids who have no ability to solve it or impact it in any way. So stay on top of what the roles in the family need to look like, because part of the joy of being a kid means that you don't have to worry about some things. Your parents take care of the worry there. So just adding that.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Can I follow with Dr. Waxman saying, I totally agree. At a certain age, we need to protect our kids from hearing some of this negativity. But as you get older, say middle school, high school, as kids are hearing some disturbing news, if they bring it up, I think a parent needs to say, okay, tell me what you heard, and just listen. Just listen to what they have to say. It's possible what they heard is totally incorrect. And then you as a parent need to step up and say, you might have heard that. You got to be careful of the source you heard that from, but here's the facts. And then just affirm that whatever that happened, if there was some truth to it, affirm in their head that, hey, you know, there are some bad things that are happening. And then try your best to end on a positive note and say, hey, what can you be thankful for about your own situation? So-and-so might have just had a loved one die, but what can you be thankful for? And then try to turn all the negativity into something that you could be positive and thankful about.
I want to thank everybody for the responses on that. And I'm just going to add that I'm really going to probably mirror what's already been said. But when we do think about the issue about information, we have to be honest and acknowledge that we have a limited capacity to deal with things that are outside of our control. We have a limited capacity as adults, and teens have limited capacity to deal with things that are completely outside of their control, and so do young children. And so it's a calculation between understanding your child's development, kind of what's appropriate at what age, understanding your child as an individual, what is their capacity and level of interest, and then that's where you begin to set limits. Because honestly, I've had conversations with a number of adults where I've said, and I don't remember, maybe Charlie, you said this, I said to them, I said, you just need to turn off the TV and you got to take a break from the news for a couple of days, because these are all things that you have absolutely no control over at this point. Why don't you spend 2 days focusing on the things that you do have control over, and then maybe come back to the news, but focus on that. Listen, I want to try to go to the last question. So of course, I've left a question for the end that there is no way we could possibly answer this in 5 minutes, but I figure we got to at least give it a shot. So, and then we'll wrap up. We might go a couple minutes over. I hope that's okay with people. I've seen that we've still got almost everybody on board who started with us. But the last question is, and again, this is a huge one. My child hates virtual learning. My child is burnt out on it already. Every day is a battle. I actually also had a conversation with a parent just earlier today. I just did an intake on a very similar situation. And this is what I'm hearing as we do intakes here at Youth Services. My kid was always a kid who liked school. This was never an issue, but now because of virtual learning, my kid just doesn't want to do it. They don't want to be engaged in it, and it's a battle. I know that this varies from age to grade and will, different responses, but are there just any general thoughts on things that any of you have seen that have been effective in terms of how parents might approach it, conceptualize it, anything at all? Because I know this is a huge challenge right now. Can anybody want to jump in on that? Is that just way too big to try to complete in 5 minutes? I think we all are seeing this, right? What do we do with this?
I can tell you, Adam, from a parent's perspective, because that's certainly conversation that we have a lot with our daughter. One of the things that's helped with her day is, and certainly this is new for everybody, and so even the way that this week has been structured for her school is a little bit different than it was last week, and I'm going to guess next week will be a little bit different as well. But one of the things that's helped is providing some like frequent breaks, and not only breaks like to get up and dance or run around or go do something for a few minutes. Also, there, the assignment starts on the Chromebook, but then the assignment is to turn the video off, go look for this book or that book, do something with it, and then come back. And so some of the assignments, even the virtual assignments, it's not sitting in front of a screen 24/7. I think in our situation, a lot of it is our daughter misses her friends. And I think there's been some excellent suggestions tonight as to that I jotted down as what we could do. It's really not I hate school, it's I hate the things I loved about school that I can't do, like the clubs after school, or the seeing my friends at lunchtime, or the playing on the new playground that they have. And but to that extent that it is an academic issue, we recognize that there are children who need it, whether they are English language learners, some of our students on IEPs that have special needs, students needing different kinds of support. We're working really hard to try to figure out how to get that support to those kids in this virtual environment. So it is recognizing this real question is easier than having an answer in a minute or two. But I think and I think it's very okay for a parent, and we've done this with our daughter's teachers, to say, you know what, we had to take a break for 5 minutes here, and then we came back. And I mean, everybody gets that, because at some point, probably every child in that class has had to do something like that. So I think it's okay for a parent to give themselves permission and their children permission. If you're just not feeling it right now, step away for a few minutes, go do something else, take a walk, get a drink of water, whatever, then come back. And that no one is going to be upset with you for doing that.
Right. Also, just so you know, parents, teachers are feeling the same way and are concerned about making sure that their time with your kids is engaging and fun and doesn't feel like a battle. We're doing teacher support groups with our hospitals, and they are very well attended. We actually had one tonight. So teachers are too looking at how to do things in a way that makes kids feel connected. Also, just take a look at the physical plant. Can you change up where your kid is learning every day, or what the area looks like, so that it's interesting or colorful or feels different to them? Can the start of their day be a note from you at the computer that says, at the end of this day is a surprise, or something that is just kind of exciting for them, or again, starting with a joke of the day or a fun fact of the day, or just ways to open that day up in a way that feels kind of fun and comfortable and enjoyable. So, and also, again, change up where they're doing their learning, change up what the physical plant looks like. That has a huge impact too.
I think the why is so important. That was hit on. That understanding why is going to be the key to knowing where to go next. So you might have 10 different kids who say this isn't working for me, and 10 different reasons why. And if you just pick one solution, it's not going to work for every kid. So one piece is really, again, on all these topics, is encouraging conversations with your kids, right? To figure out what's really the root and what's the why for them. And then I'm just going to say this piece is that once you know why, if you have thoughts on how to make things better, like no one has the answers. Anyone who says like they understand it all and know what to do about all this, I'm very concerned about, because we just don't know. So for me, I'm in an interesting spot working with schools and districts, and then also having kids in school, right? Lots of us are in that position. And I take every opportunity I can to partner with the school and say, here's what I'm seeing. What do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? This is a real amazing time in education where the partnership between families and schools can really be harnessed in a more unique way, possibly than ever before. And I think that's a phenomenal, amazing thing. So I'll just throw out there, as we're getting down to the minutes here at the end, that I think it's going to be more critical than ever that we're partnering, that we're not going against each other. I'm calling this a Red Rover year, where we lock arms, not hurting each other with Red Rover, but we got a lot of things that we're calling over here. We've got COVID, we've got social injustice, we've got economic inequities, right? Let's let those things be the things we're against, and let's lock elbows here to partner with each other. So be an advocate for your kid and your family if you have an idea. So for example, I think kids are missing out on the social interactions where there aren't adults hovering over them. Even my 7-year-old, he's used to sitting at a lunch table without adults constantly over him. So maybe the schools can do like a lunchtime meetup where kids just hang out, and there's some, we're monitoring it, but maybe there's not as much oversight and kids get to just be kids a little bit. Or maybe we get to do some hall pass periods where kids go on for 5 minutes in between classes and just hang out with each other. I don't know, but I know that parents have some great ideas, and I just don't want them to feel afraid to reach out to the school and partner. Everything I've seen is that educators are wanting that. They don't have all the answers, but it has to come from a place of we're partnering and not I'm going to get after you. And I mean, we're just all in this together. So if you've got ideas, you've talked to your kid, you know what could help. I think we should all be reaching out to the schools and offer up everything we can to try to partner and give ideas.
Allie, I just want to piggyback on that. Ice Cream Friday. Have a school bus drive by a community, toot a horn, say every Friday at this time, we're going to be passing out our little ice cream bars. That's my suggestion.
I think that's probably a great place for us to wrap up. And the reason why is I really appreciate your last comments, Allie, but I also am so appreciating your thoughts on ice cream bars, Jerry, is that really the whole purpose of this presentation, and part of why we believe that our children are capable of thriving, is in part because we will function and get through this as a community. And as long as we have that model and the idea that we are getting through this together, nobody's got the answer, but we can all work together. We can all be super creative and decorate a school bus and drive down a street giving kids ice cream. If we can do things like that, we are going to thrive, and our children are going to thrive. So I think that's a wonderful place for us to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for staying a few extra minutes. I want to thank our guest. Thank you so much for your time, your commitment, and everything that you've offered to the community. I want to thank our audience also for taking time out of their evening to be a part of this discussion. And we'll look at and figure out what we're going to do in the future. Warren Township Youth Services does have another phenomenal presentation at the early next month. I'll make sure I get information out, which is actually very specific on finding hope during this challenging time. Well, then with that, folks, I think we're going to wrap this up. I'll try to get an email out to everybody maybe tomorrow. If you don't get something, feel free to go to the website. We'll have this recorded, hopefully posted sometime mid to late part of the day. So everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Stay healthy. Take care.